Hi, welcome back. Today we're going to be taking a look at creating a HTML5 template file. Basically, this is just going to be a simple little template that contains all the basic parts and structures that you need to create or generate a web page with the HTML5 language. Often, well, it is a good idea to put together a simple template file, especially when you're starting out, because it just saves you having to type or repeatedly type in the same bits of code. And it'll also give you a good idea of the structure of a web page and how it should look, and sort of keep a bit of consistency across all your pages, which always helps. Rightio, so to do that today, we are going to be using a program called VS Code, which is a freely available code editor, but pretty much any basic text editor will do, or any sort of code editor. If you don't have any access to anything else, even Notepad will do the job. It's just in general with code editors, you get a more polished experience. So I'm going to be using Visual Studio Code, mainly because it's quite popular. So you can find a lot of tutorials for things out there, and the people making those tutorials are using Visual Studio Code, so it's just a bit easier to follow along. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it, and I'll be using Visual Studio Code for this tutorial. Okay, so in our previous tutorial, we put together our folder structure for our test website. And that, of course, included our resource folder and our www folder, which is where our website's going to end up living. So to get the ball started or going, we are going to open up that folder structure in Visual Studio Code. So we should be able to just click on File and go to Open Folder instead of Open File. We'll just navigate to our USB drive, and we'll just click on the test website, not actually open it up, and just go Select Folder. And now down the left-hand side of our window, we'll have all the folders and eventually all the files that are in our test website folder. Okay, we'll just close down if you've got a welcome tab up there, we'll just close that because we don't need that. Okay, and now we're going to set about creating our template file. So we'll go to File, and we'll go New File, click on that, and that'll bring up our untitled new file. Now, straight off the bat, it's a good idea to save your file. So we'll go File, we'll go Save, not Save As, just Save. And because this is going to be a template file and not a file that we'll be using on our final website, we are going to put this into our resources folder. So we'll double click on our resources folder, and we will call this file template. Actually, no, we will call it HTML5 underscore template. Now, under Save Type or Save As type, we're going to want to select HTML out of that list. and then click Save. The reason we set that up now is so that our code editor, it's sort of, oh well, it's a little bit clever in the sense that it can automatically complete code for us and highlight our tags and syntaxes just to make our life a little bit easier. So if we let it know that we're working on a HTML file from the start, it'll be able to start helping us straight away. Okay, and now you'll see underneath our resources folder, we've got our HTML5 template in our file structure. If you're a bit short on space on your browser, you can actually just click on these buttons on the side and that'll hide that stuff. So just the little folder icon or Explorer icon up here. So you can just hide that if you want. I generally leave it open because I've got fairly big screen, so no big drama. Okay, so now we're going to start creating our basic HTML5 template. Now, any HTML document has some basic parts to its structure. The first part is the document type. And as the name suggests, it's basically a tag that tells us what type of file this is. Or more importantly, it tells the browser that's going to be viewing the web page what type of file it is. In HTML5, it's a very short little tag. Doesn't need a lot of explanation. But in earlier versions of HTML, it took many lines and did all sorts of things. But thankfully, they've simplified it for us now, so we don't have to worry too much about that. After our document type, we'll take a few lines and we will put in our HTML tags. Now, this is the second big section. And as you can see, our code completion is already starting to kick in. And also in Visual Studio Code, it'll automatically generate the closing tag for us as well. I might bump up the size on these just to make them a bit easier to see. Okay. So as you can see, it's automatically made our closing tag for us. So I just click between those two tags and make another line. And everything to do with our HTML page is going to go between these two HTML tags. Okay. Now inside the HTML tags, we generally break the page into two sections. One section's called the head. And the other section is called the body. Now, it's not a hard and fast rule, but basically everything that goes between the head section is information that's needed for the website but isn't necessarily displayed on the page itself. Whereas the body contains all the information that's going to be displayed in the browser window that people are actually going to see. Okay. So in the head section, Generally, we put information like meta tags, which will just give some information about the website that isn't necessarily displayed. And a common meta tag that's put in here is one called char set, which is abbreviated for character set. And this just tells the web browser what type of character sets have been used to write this file. Oop. And of course, the UTF-8 is the most common format used, so it's the one that we pop in there. Another compulsory tag to have in here is our title tag. And this is text that will be displayed in the tab of the web page. Tab. In other words, it gets displayed as text here in the actual tab on the web page. So it's not actually displayed in the window, it's just what's written up here. Okay, we might just take the opportunity to save here. It's always a good idea to regularly save. And plus, with something like Visual Studio Code, it will also automatically format your document so it looks a bit neater. Now, some other common meta tags that are put into the head section are tags like try starting the tag. Things like description, which just describes the page's content. This is something that's used like by browser search engines like Google, just to quickly index a page and get a bit of an idea about the content. And another tag that's commonly put in is our author tag. And that's as the name would suggest, a tag to tell people who actually wrote the page. Rightio. So that's sort of the basics that I like to include in my template. We can, of course, space it out a bit more to make it a bit more legible. Another important one, especially from HTML5 onwards, is a link tag. And the main purpose for this link tag is to link external files to this web page. One of the most common external files that you're going to be linking to a page is your style sheet. So we will start off with our attribute stating that. And then, of course, you're going to need the URL address. So the web page can actually find the external file that it's going to use. For now, we're just going to put in link to style sheet. Seeing as we don't actually know. Or we don't actually have a style sheet yet. Okay. We close that tag. And we save that. And once again, it just formats everything to make it a little bit neater for us. And for our purposes, that's pretty much all we're going to need in the head section of our template. On other web pages, you may also have links for JavaScript files and other sorts of content like that. You may have more than one style sheet that you're using on a page, so you may have several links to different style sheets. But just for our basic display purposes, that's good enough. So we'll just space that out a bit, just to make a bit of room. Okay. So now we'll move on to our body tag. Now, as I said before, the body tag, or between the body tags, is where all the information is going to live that's going to be displayed on the actual web page in this window. So if you want something to be displayed in here, you have to put it between these body tags. Okay. So in HTML5, we actually have a few custom tags that help us set out all our information in here a little better. So we're going to be using them in combination with an older style tag just to set out our page in a more formal structure. Okay. So the first tag we're going to use is a basic div tag. And we're going to identify this div tag with a name called wrapper. Okay. And as the name suggests, a wrapper is basically just a div or a division that all other elements on our page are going to live inside, just so we've got them all wrapped together and none of them want to go wandering off on us. Okay. So the tags, the HTML5 tags that we're going to be using here set out our web page much like you'd have any sort of formal document set out. So the first tag we're going to put in is our header tag. And our header tag is where information goes like, well, so it's for information like the company name. Logos. A handy little tool in Visual Studio Code is Control /. It automatically generates these tags known as comment tags. Which, as you can see in Visual Studio Code, turns the text to green, but it also means that any web browser that reads this code will ignore text or content between those tags. It's just a handy way of putting in a bit of information so you can read and follow along, but no one else necessarily has to see it. So for a header tag, it's basically like the head section of a web page. So in the case of Google, obviously, they normally put up there whatever picture they've got of the day. But yes, it'll normally include the company name, maybe a logo, and some other sort of information. So after the header section, we're going to put in another one known as nav. And nav is just short for navigation. So it's a page, it's an element that just gives us a convenient spot to put menu items. Okay. After our nav section, we're going to have our main section. And it's just for the bulk of the core content. Of the page. So in other words, this is where all your text, images, that kind of thing would go. Then after our main section, we have our footer. And just like the footer on a page, this is where you'd put footer information. Generally speaking, might be where you put the ABN number for the company, contact details for the company, possibly links, depending on how you design your website. Will determine what sort of information goes in there. So you've got your header section, not to be confused with your head section, navigation, main, and footer. And that basically makes up our template. So if we save that, and we can see that we've got now the fundamentals or the basics for creating our web pages. So we'll just go through making our first web page now using this template. Okay. So we'll just close the file. So we're starting from a blank spot. And we'll just open up our Explorer to navigate to our HTML template file. And we'll open that up, as we can see there. Rightio. So what we will do now is we will go File, and we will go Save As. Oh, I spelled resources wrong. Anyway, we will then go to our www folder. We'll double click on that to open it up. And the first page that you're going to have on any website is a file or a HTML page called index. So we'll click in our file name, and remembering our naming conventions using all lowercase, we will call this file index. And we will save that. And you'll see up here our name, our file name's changed to index.html. If we go look in our folder structure, we've now got an index.html file in our www folder. So in other words, we've used our template to generate this index.html file. Okay, that's where we're going to leave this lesson today. Hello again. Just forgot to add something to my little template, so I thought I'd take you through and show you what that is. It's not a biggie. It'll just give you a warning if you try and validate the page, but doesn't hurt to have it in there. So we'll jump back and open up our HTML5 template. And basically we're just adding an attribute to the HTML tag. And that attribute will be LAN LANG EN. Now basically what that tag is doing is defining the language that we're going to be using on our web page. In our case, we're going to be using English, so the code for English is EN. And this just makes, well, for starters, it'll make our validators happy and we won't get a warning about not having a language set on our page. And it makes things like Google Translate work a bit better and stuff like that. Okay, so add that to your template and save it.